Okay guys, so my name's Milton. I'm a project manager from WSP on the consultant side. Many of you will have known me from the LLF sessions that we all did together. What I'm going to do is talk through the modelling. Now obviously it's always difficult how to pitch this with an audience of different mixed interests in kind of the modelling results that come out. So we tried to show them as clearly as we can and make them as easy as understandable as they can be, without trying to bore you too much with too much in one go. So let me just talk you through what we've used for the modelling for those that might be of interest. So we've looked at the do optimum, as we promised we've looked to model that. So we've used what's called a parametrics model. That's it's validated to 2016, so that means we've taken survey data from 2016 surveys and we make sure the model replicates those flows and movements in those periods. So we've got a base level in which we can put changes on and see how that affects the flows. It's an industry standard modelling software, and particularly this modelling software is used where we're looking at multiple junctions along a corridor, and we're seeing not just what changing that junction would do, where we could use independent modelling software on those junctions, but also how the cumulative impact of all those changes make on the corridor. We obviously looked slightly outside the corridor into the side roads, going up to A14, and we've got the park and rides here to cover for the buses that are coming through the model. We've got down to Mitchell's Corner, and obviously we've got sections coming off, which then we've got the survey data for. To account for how things might change in the future, we take a matrix of movements, journeys, and we run those through CSRM, so that's the county's strategic road model. So things like the station coming into play, Water Beach, anything that's in the local plan is already in that strategic model. So we use that to identify what impact that's going to have on Milton Road, so that any future modelling we understand already what the impact might be before we apply additional changes. What I'm going to show you today is the 2016 model, with 2031 is what our future year is. That's still being undertaken, that modelling work at the moment, but we want to be able to provide you what we've got at the moment, so we've got 2016. In some ways that's helpful because you obviously know, or you've got your perceptions of how traffic is at the moment, so hopefully when we've done any comparison, we've done that versus the current situation as validated with the model. So you can see what the changes will be today, but bear in mind in 2031 we're obviously looking for a lot more traffic, so if anything, the situation will get worse rather than better in terms of some of the queuing. But we're looking at those results at the moment, and we'll present those to you once we've got that all completed. And when I'm showing you the results here, we're looking in the AM peak, so we're looking between 8 AM and 9 AM, and then we're looking between the PM peak, which is 5 to 6 PM. So just to give you assurances, the LLF came up with the dual-option design, and obviously we fully appreciate you're not highway engineers. It was a concept that you presented to us. To enable us to undertake this kind of modelling and design, we've done some very initial design work to see what that would look like. So our best endeavours in trying to account for some of the elements of highway design that wouldn't have been accounted for, in turn that into an engineering design we can take measurements off and put into the modelling software in which to run the junctions.
Could you just tell us what that diagram shows?
So that's showing essentially this is the design that was presented to us, and this is just indicating to you some of the work that's been undertaken to turn that into an engineering design so we can run that through the model essentially.
And where is
Where's the junction of Gilbert Road?
That's Gilbert Road as that example. I mean, this is all rough in the background sort of stuff, but it's just to give you assurance that we've actually taken a design and turned it into as we said, we've looked at it into the engineering terms. So in terms of the key outputs from the modelling that I'm going to talk you through today, we've got journey times for the whole route, average bus journey times and reliability, performance of key junctions relative to queuing and delay, and a comparison with an existing scenario. And as I said, this is for 2016, not 2031. So this is how it will be at the moment, not how it will be in the future. We need to undertake the future. The whole point of the scheme is about future traffic impacts and how we mitigate that.
Excuse me, can I just ask one
Sorry,
question?
sorry. We're
No.
going to have the questions at the end because
No,
otherwise we
just clarification. Journey times for whole route. What do you mean by the whole route?
If you just wait for the next slide, I will...
That's why it would be wise if people would actually wait until Neil has got to the end of Gilbert Road, and then we will have questions.
Thank you, Joseph. When in terms of when we talk about the whole route, we're looking at the whole scheme that we're encompassing essentially. So north of King's Hedges Junction, all the way down to just before Mitchams. So that's where we're looking to undertake some changes, so that's what we're talking about, how we've taken the timings from the model. Obviously the model house goes beyond that, but that's what we've looked at, because obviously that's where we're making our changes. So this is where we started. So we put the do-optimum design into the model, and we looked at what that was generating in terms of, I'll talk you through the details of that, but I just want to give you an overarching kind of impact to see where we started from and where we worked to kind of work through the design you provided to us. So as you can see, if we put in everything that's in the do-optimum at the moment, then the model is indicating to us, and this is the current situation, that we'd essentially see almost a doubling of queuing that would occur in the inbound in the AM peak. So that's an increase of around from 7.5 minutes, the model's indicating, journey time to about 16.5 minutes. So in terms of outbound, that's not so impactful, as you'd expect, because most people are coming into Cambridge in the morning. When we look at the PM peak, it's not so intense in terms of, that spreads in terms of people leave work at different times, so it's not so intense in terms of the amount of people that are trying to travel out of the city. It still has an impact on that, increasing by about 2 minutes in terms of journey time, inbound and outbound, and I'll talk you through where that's coming from. But that's where we started from, which made us think we've got to look at these junctions again. This is really where the junctions are having impacts rather than between the junctions. And we'll talk you through what we've done to try and take your design concept, but enable that to work in a highways capacity sense.
Is this for buses, sorry?
This is into all vehicles.
Including bicycles?
No, because that's not all motorised vehicles.
Sorry, your modelling of bicycles is not on there yet. When do we get into that?
We do not have, there isn't the ability to, what we've done in terms of bicycles, just to answer that quick question, is you may have seen the guys, they've been undertaking surveys along the route, undertaking the journey movements of cyclists at the moment, so we can understand the key desire lines and the kind of number of cyclists who are coming around the junctions. We don't have that data. The modelling software in the industry at the moment doesn't have the ability to model cycle movements, so we have to take account of that in other ways in terms of local knowledge, which will feed in, and also in terms of our highway engineering knowledge of how we can accommodate cycles.
I mean, a big part of
Sorry,
was a global
please,
shift to
please,
cycling.
but don't
This is
answer
the
the
current.
question.
Okay, yeah,
I'm
sure.
really sorry, but if you could please wait until Neil has finished his bit. Please exercise the capacity to remember the question you have. If you need a pen, I've got plenty of pens here and paper. You can write your question down, and then at the end of this bit of the presentation, you can ask your question then. Please have the courtesy to allow Neil to complete this. Thank you.
In terms of looking at bus reliability, I mean that's a key element of the scheme that we're looking to improve. At the moment, there are obviously bus lanes on Milton Road, and in the do-optimum scheme, there would be no bus lanes on Milton Road. So I'm just trying to indicate through this slide to you what kind of level of impact that was going to have. So this is outbound in the current situation, and then this is the outbound in terms of the do-optimum. And you might say, well, it looks very little difference. But outbound at the moment, there isn't any bus lanes anyway at the moment. So as we'd expect, we wouldn't see too much change in that. Journey times, average journey times has increased, again, leaving the city. This is in the AM peak. But otherwise, not a massive amount of change. When we start to look inbound, so coming into the city in the AM peak, this is the current situation. So we're seeing an average journey time probably around 8-9 minutes. Obviously, when we look at the do-optimum with no bus lanes in here, obviously with the demand that's coming through, suddenly not only do we get a massive increase in average journey time for that bus, increasing almost doubling, I would say, we're also seeing, this is the variability from the average, so we're seeing a massive variability on the journey time, so they're becoming less reliable and able to meet their timetable as they're coming down. So hopefully this indicates the importance of why, in the current situation, we do have bus lanes, and taking them out completely, there really is, Chris has tried to say, there is no really any incentive for people to take the buses, and therefore we won't get that kind of modal shift we're hoping to achieve. So in terms of reviewing this information, what we've then gone on to do to look at is review and test alternative junction designs, which look to balance vehicle journeys along Milton Road while maintaining the principle to do optimum. I'll talk you through those in a moment. We've identified optimum locations for bus priority. As I said, we need to, and as Chris has said, we're not really providing any more in terms of bus lanes than are currently there at the moment, but what we can't be doing is taking them away, so having a worse situation. What we've done is optimise where those are located, so we can't have them on both sides of the road, not 4 lanes of traffic, just 3, but what we've done is place them in different locations based on where the modelling is indicated to give us an optimum use of that. Landscaping and tree planting opportunities, we've tried to maximise that where possible. Where there's elements, as the gentleman's brought up a number of times, where you prefer to maybe see more cycling and less maybe green space, we can accommodate that. You know, we can move some of these around. This is a concept, but we're trying to capture as much as we can of what the do optimum is. Right, so the key modelling junctions we're going to look at today are the key ones that obviously along Milton Road and affect the movement of traffic. So that's Gilbert Road, Liver's Way, Arbury Road and King's Hedges. So, we started with do optimum, and that's a picture of the current situation. Now, when we looked at this in terms of how we could turn this into something we can model, there's a number of key elements with the design already, which just in highway terms can't really be accommodated. So this junction's been really brought in and really tightened up, so you can accommodate these kind of cycle movements and also this green space. In reality, that kind of movement wouldn't be achievable. Once we track that, it's just too tight for vehicles. So we've had to look at, but in terms of, so what we've put into the model is as close as we can to this design, but obviously we've had to make small alterations so the modelling software can work in terms of movement of vehicles. It wouldn't be achievable. That's understandable. It's a concept that you provided to us. We appreciate that's just, it's your thoughts on what you want to see, and therefore we've tried to do that. There's a re-establishment of the right-hand lane as well, as well as the straight on. And signal staging, we've assumed, is very similar to the current situation, because there wasn't necessarily any information on that, so that's a kind of a more fair comparison. So, as we've seen, so red is the do optimum, and blue is the current situation. So, in terms of on Milton Road, inbound and the AM, they're very similar, there's not much difference there at all. In the PM, in fact, the do optimum looks to be an improvement in terms of stuff coming into the city. A bit of reverse, I guess, a flip on that in terms of stuff coming out of the city. It's slightly worse than the do optimum in terms of the queue lengths, particularly in the PM peak. And again, in Gilbert Road, we're seeing quite similar. Again, on the AM, there's an improvement with the do optimum, but in the PM, there's this benefit compared to the current situation. So it's reasonably well balanced. You kind of expect some sort of movement around. There's not a massive amount of difference between the two designs, really, between the current situation and the one being proposed. So what we've tried to do in terms of, this is a design which we've looked to do in terms of what we can accommodate really in terms of trying to match your design. So this is yours here, and this is what we're putting forward as a concept. So we're trying to retain the cycling features as much as we can here. There isn't the width that's kind of indicated here when you actually are on site, it's quite a bit tighter. So in reality, in terms of when you've got the vehicle movements, we've got to push those slightly back. We haven't got the generosity we've got here in terms of these elements. In terms of a dedicated right-hand lane, it's kind of a half lane. There's the ability for people to do that and people to negotiate. There is still movement here. We could look at, there's still movement that could be looked at in terms of accommodating how we shift some of this space here. But in general terms, I hope you can see, we've tried to, with the bus lane obviously included in there, try to accommodate as much as possible. There's still high priority there for pedestrians and cyclists whilst trying to improve the capacity of the junction. So in terms of that design versus the do optimum versus the current situation, we're still maintaining some of the key elements in terms of the priority of cyclists and pedestrians, I hope you can see that, but we're getting a slight optimisation there from using that semi-right-hand turn rather than a dedicated, and therefore from the analysis, that one looks to be the most optimised solution that we can come up with for this junction, which works in highway terms, works in safety terms, and tries to encompass the ethos of what's there in the do optimum scenario.
Now, does anybody have questions or issues to raise?
Ceramics only models car flows, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
But there is...
Well, and bus, you can dedicate it, but motorised vehicles, yeah.
But there is a version of ceramics that models pedestrian flows.
There's PTV do a software that looks at pedestrian flows, but they're not interchangeable in terms of the site scale of the model. Usually you use those as a kind of station in terms of if you're designing a stadium sort of thing in terms of modelling pedestrian movements. So what we can do is what we've done, which is go and take up-to-date survey data of where those movements are, And then as part of the process, when we go further into the more detailed design, we'll have obviously sessions with the LLF. We'll look at the kind of concept we're putting forward, and if it's a question of, on this section we need more two-way cycling, and we're willing to accept that we'll have less of a dedicated pedestrian element on there. I mean, what we've shown in that downlands lane is obviously a dedicated pedestrian and a dedicated cycle that can be combined into one massively shared area. Also, when we've looked at the cross sections, we've designed around the minimum width, and often there's a lot more width to play with. So we haven't looked at it at the moment because we're not that detailed design, we're at a concept stage, so we've got the ability to accommodate that as we go forward.
Right. Now, I've got, 5 questions now, and we'll stop at that. Mike Sargent, Hilary Goy, Anna Bradham, and I should have welcomed Anna Bradham, who's the councillor for
Milton, and County Council for Waterbeach Division.
And Waterbeach, that's right, yeah. And so Mike, Hilary, Anna, and then there are 2 here. One and then 2.
Do I wait till they've all been answered?
Yes,
yeah.
let's do that if we can. Yeah, so please go ahead.
So Neil, on this, you don't actually show any data about bus times and the impact on bus times through the junction. And just looking at it, doesn't seem to be much difference between all of the options, the way you put it across. So the 2 optimums looks just about as good as your modified 2 optimums. I'd like you to comment on that.
Right. Good. Now, was it Hilary or Anna? I think
Hilary first.
I'm very concerned about the removal of the dedicated right-hand lane at Gilbert Road. When the dedicated right-hand lane was removed at the Elizabeth Way, the Highworth Avenue roundabout, the traffic immediately formed a queue, because instead of having 2 queues, one of which is going to go in one direction and the other is going to go straight on, you had 1 queue with twice as many cars in it. How can you justify removing the dedicated right-hand lane? It will cause more jam.
Just to quickly answer that, there isn't a right-hand turn lane at the moment. We're putting it back in both designs, both the optimum and the modified optimum.
You just said you're removing it. Right.
No, I don't think so, or if I did, sorry to
Yes,
say
that's what you said. There wouldn't be a dedicated right-hand lane.
Well, now we know there is. Okay, here and then 2 and another one. I'm sorry, it's difficult to see.
I think it was me.
Oh,
was
so
there.
sorry. Yeah.
Well, my question is simply technical. What are the units on the vertical axis? Are they time or distance?
My name's Gary Gibbons. My question is, to what extent are your models sensitive to the mix of traffic? For example, can you determine how things would change if you just removed all large lorries from the traffic flow?
Right.
So I just wanted to make a point. There are bus lanes in the do optimum proposal, so I was a little puzzled when you said that there are none. I hope that didn't affect the modeling assumption. There are also targeted bus priority measures, such as queue jump lanes and stuff like that. But yes, the Gilbert Road Junction was created the way it was created, and I appreciate what you did with the tracking, by the way, thank you for that. Because that end of Milton Road is shown in the city access study to have very low traffic compared to the other half and decreasing. And that's why it was felt to be completely inappropriate to have 3 lanes of traffic there. And as I saw, it squeezes up against the cycle lane, which is exactly the problem in the do maximum and the do something, where we saw people cycling, and children especially, would be squeezed up against heavy vehicles. But to bring it back to the Gilbert Road Junction, thank you for showing that as expected, the introduction of the right-hand turn lane helps a lot and makes it so that pretty much it's about the same as the current situation and doesn't affect any of the current movements, and it makes things better, as you said, in fact. One of the key question I thought is when you showed that the AM peak, the high increase for the AM peak and the high variance for the AM peak journeys inbound, that was completely out of character for all the other, it's like an outlier. And that seems rather strange to me because, as we know, people here know, there's plenty of traffic going inbound in the PM. And so does that mean that you didn't, is that somehow related to missing out on all the bus priority measures in do optimum? And also, did you take into account the fact that the bus lane that's currently in Mitchum's Corner area is used as a parking zone? So if you model that as a bus lane, it's not a bus lane. Everybody just double parks there. So, thank you.
Night Sergeant asked about the bus times through that junction. Have you modelled the bus times coming through the junction? There was the question about the right-hand lane, which we had clarified it's there. There was a question about times and, sorry.
If you remind me of each one, and then I'll answer that as we go, if that's okay. So in terms of the bus going through the junction, so this is obviously a corridor model. It's looking at the whole journey time coming through. So often to say on these as well, the results coming out of this are obviously we've taken queue lengths from the junction, but obviously that has an effect on what's put through the whole scheme in terms of when you get to this junction. There may be other effects that have had on the other junctions to allow the traffic to get to this junction, and that so it has a knock-on effects kind of thing. Just to say they're not shouldn't be just seen in isolation, but in terms of queue lengths, we've just identified that for you to get an idea of what's going on at each of the junctions we're talking about. We can't split out particularly between the buses and the traffic. There isn't any particular priority here at the moment for, we can look at putting bus priority within the signals. That's not there at the moment, so it will be the same for buses as it will be for vehicles at this particular junction in terms of the queue lengths. And this is queue lengths, and to answer the question in terms of what's the measurement, that's in metres.
Thank you. And the last one was, how sensitive is the model to the mix?
So in terms of the mix of the traffic, obviously we've got validated model data, so we've got the current survey data to indicate what the mix is at the moment, and that's what's being used in the model to put through the model essentially, so in terms of the kind of types of traffic that's coming down this road. It is an A road, it is a main route into the city. Heavy goods vehicles do use that. I guess the model has an ability, it's probably fairer to test that with the mix that's in there in terms of both scenarios. What I'm trying to show here is the existing situation versus the optimum, so it's an even comparison between the two, essentially.
Yeah, it'd just be interesting to know if you just block two large vehicles, what the... I realise that there's...
I guess there's other impacts on that in terms of where those then large vehicles take as an alternative route, and then we're looking into more strategic modelling, which is something that the CSRM can maybe accommodate to a certain extent, but there's knock-on effects beyond Milton Road, which have to be considered a part of that.
And then there was Matt's question about whether not taking into account that there were...
Yeah, so apologies, that's my mistake for it in terms of speaking. So we've taken the do optimum as it is, so we've got the bus priority where you've placed it, and we've got the bus lanes where you've placed them in the model. So those elements are in there. We haven't missed those out. Those are the part. And when I get to some of the junctions where you've clearly shown the bus priority, so at Union Lane, I can explain the impact that has.
I just was curious, both the strange outlier of the AMP compared to the others, because we all know that it's busy at other times too.
So the outlier, I'm not sure what you mean by that on that. So these are
the other side.
It's the overall journey.
Oh, you mean for the buses?
You had a diagram, scatter?
Yes, scatter.
Whisker diagram, yeah. And then the other one...
So it wasn't an outlier, so that was showing the dot was the average journey time in the models. The models run 10 times, we took the average of that, that's the average journey time, so that indicates with the do optimum that was increasing bus journey times, almost doubling it. And then the two sides of the variations from the average to show you kind of the difference in variance. Also, if they're close together, then there's less variance and more regular, more to the timetable, and when it's wider, obviously you're getting more difference in terms of the bus ability to keep to its timetable.
Not to get into this too much, just it should be more generally distributed, unless there's something like particularly wrong with the model. And number two, did you count the ones in front of the shops at Mitchum's Corner as a bus lane?
In terms of the current situation,
yes.
Or in terms of
the current situation?
So in the current situation, well, yes, we've got a bus lane in there at the moment. So
okay, just to let you know, in reality, that's not a bus lane.
Fine.
Good. Now, what we'll do now is move on to the Elizabeth Way roundabout, or Highworth Avenue roundabout, and then we'll have a chance of questions after that. And remember, there's a chance of questions right at the end of everything. So if we go on to...
Yeah, absolutely. So Elizabeth Way Junction, the suggestion was to put a kind of Dutch-style roundabout into this location. And again, that's just indicating to you the do optimum design. with the bus, with bus priority lane coming in, which we've accommodated, versus the current situation. When you've got something like this with a design like the Dutch style, what we have is what's called points of conflict, or points where a driver has to consider his whereabouts. So imagine if you're a driver coming down the road here, first you've got pedestrians to consider, then you've got cyclists, and then obviously you've got the traffic going around the roundabout at the same time. So you've got 3 points in which you've got to consider, and that essentially slows down your movement into the junction, which is mainly part of the intention. You've then got a smaller radius because you've got these buildings, so that's a lot smaller than we've got at the moment. Again, that kind of slows down traffic, enables less capacity to come around this junction, which may be part of the design. This is just to indicate that we've looked at accident records, and as I'm sure you're well aware, I don't need to tell you, there's a number of accidents that have obviously occurred in the past at Elizabeth Way Junction. That's Elizabeth Way there. And obviously, in any design that we take coming forward, we've got to accommodate for that in trying to make that as safe as possible for cyclists. So, when we look at the doctor, bearing in mind that reduction in capacity, we start to see some quite extreme results in terms of how the queuing's changed. As you expect at Highways Avenue, you're not really seeing any difference. There's not really anything feeding into here. Coming into the city in the morning, we're seeing about a doubling of queuing into the junction. In the PM, it's reasonably stable. Elizabeth Way, though, and coming down to the further junction, there's a big queuing, and that has big impacts. It starts to impact on the Chesterton Road junction within the model, and you start getting some big issues occurring off Elizabeth Way. And then coming out of the city, although you are seeing a benefit in the AM coming out, there is again a disbenefit in the PM. So I think that reduction in capacity on the junction means that there is a lot of traffic being used through here. Being a roundabout, not signalised, means there's an ability to really link with Arbury Road, which, as you will probably know from using it, a lot of the issues that are on Elizabeth Way are inability to move around the junction because you get to Arbury Road and then the signals change and you can't come onto the junction. So having a roundabout doesn't enable us to control that in any way. So hence that and the reduction in capacity that can go through the junction equates these bigger queues essentially. What we've looked to do then is see what we could do as alternatives that can come forward. So we're putting forward 2 options at the moment. So this is essentially a signalisation of the current roundabout. This is good in that it allows pedestrians to undertake their movements, and these are shared surfaces. So this is enabling people to be offline, undertaking cycle movements if they're at certain elements, taking a left turn at each of the arms. Highways Avenue is not closed. It's a signalisation of the roundabout. Second option, and this is to be kind of debated, but let's put it out there for discussion, is a 3-arm signalised junction. Obviously that gives a lot more space for green landscaping. We've got a shared use space here again, so this is what I'm talking about in terms of we have got shared use cycle lanes, and those can be extended further along the road where we've got the width to do so. We've got dedicated offline cycleways. We've connected all the dedicated pedestrian crossings that are there. So we've looked at 2 options to see what difference those would have in terms of when we model those compared to the option that's been put forward to us. So looking at the differences, so blue is the current situation, red is the due optimum, and this is the total vehicle queue length. So this is taking all the arms, adding them all up together, and then seeing what the total is to give you a kind of overall picture for comparison. When we look at the do modify, so that's a 3-armed junction with the closure of Highworth Avenue. Obviously it's slightly better, but it's still, what we're doing is we have an all red phase, obviously, to allow all those pedestrian movements. That still takes quite a lot of capacity out of the junction, so it is going to be, if we went with something like that, it would still be worse than the current situation. In terms of a signalised roundabout, that always is going to have benefits, because you're taking out that sense of delay and hesitation of drivers coming into a roundabout. If you're coming into the roundabout at the moment, you're obviously looking to see who's also on the roundabout, and that makes you pause. When it's signalised, it means that you know when you're good to go and you know when you can't go. So a signalised roundabout always increases capacity. It's also a good thing that because each arm's being triggered in turn, you can allow pedestrian movements to interweave almost, a pedestrian cycle to be put into play, as you go around the roundabout, rather than in a signal junction you need to ideally close down all the arms to allow those pedestrian movements. So a signalised roundabout at this location, and I think there's still some work to kind of maximise the space we do with that, looks to be the best option going forward in terms of Elizabeth Way.
Sorry, excuse me, can you just go back to previous diagram, just so we can remind ourselves which is which?
Yes, sorry, so
Sorry, have you finished on the...
I have, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good.
So modified to optimum signals and signal roundabout. So the yellow is the signals and the purple is the signalised roundabout. Okay, so blue is the current situation. Red is the dual optimum, so the Dutch style roundabout. Yellow is the three-arm signal junction. Purple is the signalised roundabout. So not two different in design, except we have got shared dedicated cycleways on all sections of the arm. But again, because we've kept the roundabout the size it is, that gives limited ability to change too much around the junction, especially with filling signals in, but it does give you that optimisation in terms of that particular junction.
Good. Now, I can see a whole lot of hands. If we'll have it in threes, then I think that's probably easier. And then let's have somebody who hasn't asked a question right up the back there, and then to here, yes. So we'll have those three, and then you can respond. Yes, thank you.
So, given that the aim of this exercise was to prioritise bus transport into Cambridge, given that the aim of this exercise, one of the aims was to prioritise bus transport and to improve transport into Cambridge. Am I right in thinking that the signalised roundabout, in other words, the purple bars, is the only solution that meets those criteria, actually?
Right, stop there. Sorry, yes, and here? Yes, yes.
How can you justify saying signalised junctions improve the flow of traffic when on the Newmarket Road junction there, when the lights are not working, traffic flow is actually very high, much higher. And if you do your Optima or Plan 2 for the Elizabeth Way junction, you will be sending the traffic out onto the Arbury Road and then increasing the problem at the Arbury Road junction.
Yes. Right. Good. And then there was somebody here that I didn't have. I'm sorry. If you remember who you are, that would be better. It's easier for you to remember who you are than me to remember. There was somebody at the back there on this side. Well, somebody else then. Who else? Yes, in the front here.
The signalised junction. I don't understand how a cyclist going up Milton Road, how they get across the junction.
Yeah. Right. So those three. Oh, sorry. Have you finished? Sorry, beg your pardon. I didn't mean to interrupt. Good. Good. Yes.
Sorry, so could you just remind me?
The first one was...
Mine like a goldfish club.
Prioritising bus transport.
Prioritising bus transport so that being the... Yeah, so in this particular junction, we've got to look at the corridor as a whole, and at the end of this I'll give you the statistics I gave you earlier in terms of how bus journey time improves. So we've got to look at how bus priority works across the whole corridor. At this particular junction, for vehicle movements, which would include bus movements, the best optimised solution would be the signalised roundabout at this particular location. But the whole point of the Paramedics model is to look at that in terms of parallel, in terms of how it works for other junctions, particularly in this one, how it's interacting with Arbury Road Junction, and which is what we've been able to look at with this type of modelling.
Now the next question was that how can we say that signalised junctions actually improve traffic flow when we know that apparently on Newmarket Road this is not the case?
So every junction is, obviously has to be modelled in itself, but in general terms, if you've got a roundabout, as I tried to explain, in terms of a roundabout, if it's very busy roundabout as Elizabeth Way is, and you've got that drivers coming in and having to obviously stop, look, accommodate who's coming on the roundabout, that puts into delay. When you signalise it, enables people, particularly in a busy peak hour situation, enables that to be regularised, and those arms which need more green time, more access to cross over around the roundabout, that ability, the easy ability to manage it, which therefore results in greater capacity. That's generally the case, but obviously you have to look at each junction, and hence why we've modelled the number of different situations here to see what affects at this particular junction, based on the flows we've taken from our survey data.
And then how do cyclists get across the junction?
Okay, so in terms of how cyclists cross, in terms of, I think it was in terms of
It's the middle one.
the middle one. Okay, so, sorry, I don't know what's going on my laser, but, oh, there we go. So we have got crossings on each arm here, so each of these crossings. So you either, if you were coming up, say Elizabeth Way, and you wanted to take a left, and you could just stay offline. So this is a shared pedestrian cycle service, and you could carry on onto Milton Road equally on all these coming into either of these arms. In terms of if you want to go kind of right around the junction, either you have to sit in the current situation. Obviously, we could potentially put priority for cyclists, give them a head start, but they would have to be on the road, or they would have to undertake each crossing at a time to get around the junction. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to balance all different users at this junction.
Sorry.
Obviously, then an option like this provides more priority for cyclists, but it's trying to accommodate that with what's there in the existing situation. There are limits to what we can put in unless you get the situation, this very busy junction where you limit vehicle capacity too greatly.
I couldn't hear what you said because you talked so fast at the beginning. If I'm coming up Milton Road, is there a priority for a cyclist in front of that? Is that what you're saying?
We could look, as I say, these are concepts at the moment. So in terms of, yes, we have the ability, it's not showing that in there, but because we're signalising it, there would be ability to give cyclists a head start at each of these each of these signalised locations.
Because at the moment it looks like the cyclists go up Highworth Avenue, which they don't want to do if they're going
So you're talking about, where are you talking about cyclists coming from?
up Milton Road.
Up Milton Road. Okay, so if they want to go straight ahead, they could either take the shared surface. On Highworth Avenue there isn't a lot of traffic, so we've not put a dedicated crossing here. There's not a lot of people, as the data shows, there's not an awful lot wanting to go up Highworth Avenue. So therefore, you'd undertake to take a crossing yourself and then get back into the shared surface. But as I said, these are concepts. It's about looking at where the signalisation of this roundabout works. We can go into more detail. There'll be sessions to work into looking at the broad concepts of what we're going to do with these junctions. Are we turning it into a 3-arm signalised? Are we doing a signalised roundabout? Are we doing a Dutch style roundabout? Are we leaving it as it is? That's what we're at the level of trying to accommodate at the moment.
Now, I see 3, 1, and 3 at the back there. Then, Hillary, you've had a couple of goes. So over the back there, if it's somebody who hasn't had a go. And then, did you have a question? No. And then if this is no, I need to have 3 people who haven't asked a question earlier. If you stand up, please stand up. If you want to ask a question, could you please stand up? That's the best thing to do. Yes. Yes. And that just, it will have you at the end. These 2. And is there somebody else who hasn't asked a question? No, but then we'll have Matt and Richard and Mike. So please, yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah, right.
If you stay standing up when you ask your question, everybody will hear the question and will you know if you've actually had your question asked. Thank you.
Neil, you were going through alternative option 1 and you still haven't explained. If I come from Gilbert Road, trying to make a right-hand turn into going towards the Chesterton area, you have not shown how I safely can bicycle that way.
Good. Now, yes, thank you. Yes, please.
So speaking as an occupant of one of the 4 houses on the southwest corner, which are the only 4 properties between this junction and Gilbert Road which have no provision for on-site parking at all and are entirely reliant on on-street parking, and recognising the desire to keep the landscape as enhanced as possible in terms of trees and minimising disruption to the highway at all times, but the serious concerns of those residents to have, to be able to maintain their properties, there was a recognition of that in terms of needing to do the audit for people who didn't have this provision and making alternative provision where possible for them. There was an inclusion of a slip road, recognising that people have land in front of their properties which could be converted to parking on their own land, and therefore in the future when they're maintaining their properties they could have contractor parking, offloading of debris etc. onto their own properties. Has that been considered at this stage as being something which is possible, or is that something which would be looked at a later stage? Sorry, long question, but I just wanted to explain it a bit.
Can I just clarify whereabouts on the junction you're...
So come down to the southwest.
LLF.
Those
LLF.
properties
These properties,
have no, other properties on the other side have parking behind, the other properties on the other corners have access, as I think was being mentioned before, directly into their properties, but those 4 properties are entirely reliant on on-street parking.
You've got that on board. Richard,
Sorry. Speaking as a resident of 5th Avenue, one of the things that troubles me about the modified do option, which is on the far right, is that there's no turning head. And that means that any vehicle that comes down from the north, as it's drawn there, does not have any opportunity to turn. So I may have mentioned this before, on several occasions, but I think it doesn't help when these plans are put forward, which I'm afraid cannot be taken on. Also, you've said about the capacity of this junction. To the best of my knowledge, this junction does not have any problem of capacity. It is limited by Arbury Road. And I think that when we get to Arbury Road, it'd be helpful to consider those two together. Very, very happy to meet on site and talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew Danish here. I just wanted to say, can you go back a slide? Actually, another one, sorry, to the first one on this section. There you go. The reduced roundabout radius slows traffic speed. That is true, and that is the intention of a roundabout. And circulatory capacity, that's not true. In fact, reduced traffic speed increases circulatory capacity, which is why these are used on the continent very successfully. That's why I chose to design this roundabout based on the Dutch Crown Manual, Design Manual for Streets. And I used the parameters that are contained within the Dutch Crown Manual and basically transcribed them directly onto this diagram, recognizing that the current roundabout here is extremely large. So there's plenty of room to work with. So certainly we can adjust, tweak those figures based on more discussion. But the idea that this is this junction, as presented by the Dutch, can't handle capacity, it comes straight out of the manual. So my theory here, just looking at the slides at the very moment, is that your modeling software is not capable of handling the Dutch-style roundabout. And the reason for that is, I know what a micro-simulation model does. It tries to simulate the movement of individual cars, which means it has to have an understanding of how drivers behave and how each car behaves. And it seems to me that in this case it's not quite understanding how drivers handle a roundabout. These types of roundabouts are rated for 25,000 cars per day, and they're used in the Netherlands, and there are ways to increase that capacity if necessary. I would love to discuss this further. I just wanted to bring up that point that I don't believe that the modeling software is handling this correctly, and I think everything that Richard said also is correct.
Yeah, if you go forward a couple of slides, and again, right, on that one, sorry for that. Yeah, so I was surprised that you were talking about shared cycling and pedestrians around the option 1, because I think one of the things that came out very strongly from the workshops that we did want segregation between cyclists and pedestrians. Can we please make sure this isn't a final option, if you like, because I think we do need segregation, and that needs to be built into anything we do.
Good, because there's There's Lillian Lundblad asked about...
If I can just tie in Matt and, is it Richard, sorry?
Yes.
Yeah, Richard together. Richard said that, yeah, the capacity isn't an issue at this junction, it's to do with Arbury Road junction. I think the interconnection and working between them is key, I agree. And therefore, if we have a roundabout with no signalisation on, as the Dutch style, we've got no ability to control those two junctions together. So I think if we obviously have some ability to signalise this junction and then have that working smartly with the Arbury Road junction, that gives a great ability to deal with traffic issues at this location. So just think, what was the other?
There was the issue about cycling access. Or is it...
In terms, yeah, just to say for the shed, obviously when I show you at the end of this presentation, when we get to that point, there are lots of elements where we have got dedicated pedestrian, dedicated cycling, segregated. Certain elements, like a junction here, we just don't have the space to do that. So there has to be some acceptance that in some of these areas where we're trying to accommodate all road uses, there will be some shared services. And in some areas, obviously, we've heard how people would like to have shared services. So I think you have to look at, and there'll be ability to do that at the end, to look at the scheme as a whole, rather than obviously we're focusing down the junctions on this element. But we've taken on board what was said of the LLF about segregation. We've tried to accommodate that as much as possible.
Right, then...
In terms of the houses, obviously, this is a key junction at the moment along the road. And as Chris indicated at the beginning, we have a number of accesses at the moment, which also would have an impact as well. One of the key accesses is right here on this element here. Another one that has been accommodated. There's another one here, which makes this design difficult to achieve as well when you start looking at the access points that come into the junction from existing residence accesses. But also, so we're not able to obviously provide, and maybe I misunderstand your question, but we're not able to provide direct access onto the junction for you because that's just would be unsafe to do so at the moment. In terms of how we could accommodate you elsewhere along the scheme, that is something we'll have to consider as we go forward in the design in terms of having an areas potentially that you've got access to through vouchers, if it's a parking thing, whatever. We can certainly work with you as a resident in terms of how we're going to accommodate that to make the situation hopefully no worse than it is at the moment, to make improvement, but we can't start putting access into a key junction.
No, I appreciate that wasn't even within the design. It wasn't. We appreciate the health and safety issues.
Sure.
About providing access to.
Yeah, we'll have to still consider trying to find a solution for your issue with that as we go forward.
We've got 3 questions here now. Michael.
Just one there was a point that hasn't been answered.
I'm just asking that question.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Could you please respond to Matt's question about the ability of the model to correctly model the capacity of a Dutch-style roundabout? Because to me, that seems to be critical.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the software that's out there at the moment, all we can do is best look to reproduce a Dutch-style roundabout within the modelling software as best we can. It doesn't have an ability to drop in a Dutch-style roundabout per se. We have to look at the best guidance we've got available in terms of Transport Research Laboratory, look at that, look at what we've got with our modellers in terms of best replicating the kind of stuff that's been expected to be seeing, and then put that into the modelling to best replicate it. There isn't a software package out there that accommodates this widely used in the UK transport industry. There may be if you go to Holland, but
yes, please go to Holland.
Okay, I can't take a software package and with rules of how cyclist priority works with cars in Holland and put that into here and expect that to be signed off in terms of health and safety. It doesn't matter about how ingenious Cambridge is. We have to work with the industry standards in terms of what we're taking forward in terms of adapting a design using modelling software that's widely been validated and is accepted in the industry as working. We've done we're looking at the best we can, but I think there are wider issues about having an uncontrolled roundabout here rather than it just being a Dutch-style roundabout. I think there's better ability to have optimisation through having some sort of signalisation at this junction, and I think the results indicate, if you don't forget, what we're looking at, which prompted us to relook at this, is a doubling of journey time along Milton Road with elements in here. Now, even if there's some refinement of the model, a doubling is quite a significant difference in terms of the current situation that we're seeing. So that even if there was a margin of error in there, there's still a significant delay that's occurring, which means more traffic outside your houses, which means more delay for people coming down. We're trying to take the do optimum, accommodate as best we can with what's available to come up with a solution that maintains the ethos, essentially. I think you have to look at the scheme as a whole, which when I get to the end of the presentation you'll be able to see. Obviously we're focusing on the junctions at the moment, but you have to think of the scheme as a whole in terms of what it's looking to achieve. And I think have a look at that and then obviously come back with comments based on that once you've seen it, see the whole situation. In terms of the visualisations that Chris showed you, which hopefully you can see is trying to accommodate your vision of what's along the road as a whole. If to stop us being here, and if we move on to the next one,
Chair,
there'll be lots of other...
one further question that has not been addressed.
Sorry.
No, it hasn't been answered. It's the one about the turning head. If Highworth Avenue is to be closed, can they have confirmation that a turning head will be put in there?
There is no issue. If we're closing highway avenues off, we can put a turning head in. There's no problem. As you can see, you just take away more, some of the green space will go and a turning head will put in its place. That's not a problem.
Now, just I've got a question.
These are a concept. These are not the final design. This is something we can take forward with you into a preferred solution.
And the same is true of duopoly.
Yeah.
It's a concept.
Yeah. The point is that this will all be up on the website, and if people have further questions that they want to put to it, then they can actually do it directly to the city deal and get a response. But we've just got Councillor Ian Manning would like to ask a question, and Councillor Nigel Gawthorpe.
Just being
and then we'll move on to Arbury Road.
I think as residents we've got to recognise it's very difficult for a guy who's kind of, an officer working with a certain remit, where they've obviously been doing things in a certain way because we have those regulations within the UK, to be expected to just immediately take on board what we're saying. But at the same time, I think it would be completely remiss not to stress this point about what Matthew said essentially, because I was going to ask the same thing. If they do it in Holland, it can be done here.
Yes.
And I think, I'm not asking you personally to answer, because I think it wouldn't be fair, but I think what you essentially need to say back to your boss is there's a reputational issue here, WSP as a company. That if we are all saying we are paying you, not you personally, we may be paying you a lot of money, I don't know, but we are paying WSP a lot of money to do a lot of work for us, then we will take that money somewhere else and pay a different set of consultants who can go to Holland and can find how the Holland model is stuff, because I'm sure they do. That said, it's really unfair to put this guy on the spot and to come around and go, yes, of course we'll do it, because it's something further up the food chain. But there is a way to do it, and everyone knows what I'm about to mention. There is a way of doing this stuff that's completely outside your modelling software, and that's we trial it. And you could trial that with using temporary materials, you could trial that model of roundabout, and we could prove with experimental heroes, and I'm not expecting to say yes or no now, again, it's unfair, but there is a way we could try that out and prove whether it did or didn't work outside of the software.
What we're saying. No, perhaps I'm missing something, but
give them the microphone.
Perhaps I'm missing something, but on the alternative option 2, the modified, how does a southbound cyclist go navigate down Highworth Avenue?
Sorry?
Yeah.
You'd have to go north of Highworth Avenue.
No, absolutely coming south down Highworth Avenue as he's getting down.
The signalisation, are we talking option?
The last one.
The last one, the one on the far right?
Yeah, the last one.
So you're saying if you're coming southbound
Down Milton Road.
to Milton Road?
They can navigate down
Highworth.
Do you mean from Highworth?
From Highworth. There are many cyclists.
No, to Highworth.
To Highworth, you'd have to, if you're coming southbound, you would need to come along, stop, take the crossing over, and then you'd be able to access through.
That's what I was missing.
I mean, all I can say is in terms of WSP's reputation, I mean, we are obviously using industry standing modelling with our experts to best represent what's being put forward to us to help inform design going forwards. There are lots of regulations in terms of design, it has to go through safety audits. We're trying to come up with a solution with you that captures your elements of the ethos of what you want to have, a boulevard of trees along the road, the accommodation of better cycling and walking, whilst also maintaining a certain level of capacity for vehicles along the road. And we are using the modelling software as best we can that's available as industry standards to do that. I'll just leave it at that point for now.
Now we'll move on to Arbury Road and Union Lane.
Okay. So, Arbury Road. So we have taken the dual-option design. Matthew provided here was quite clear with the signal staging that he wanted to accommodate into the design. We have a peak lane bus lane that comes in. There are difficulties in reality of how that will be signed, in terms of how we accommodate that, in terms of how do we stop people using that in their car, how to know when they do or don't. How do we mark that? Would that be, you wouldn't want a gantry going across indicating when the lane can or can't be used. How do we do that with signage so it's not confusing? There's issues that have got to be considered in terms of that. The other factor that maybe people wouldn't have considered when they looked at the design, but obviously that stops an ability to take a right turn into Arbury Road during the peak time, because that's dedicated to buses in this scheme.
That was intentional.
Yes, okay, but that's just to make people aware that that's obviously in there. So we've used the staging that's been suggested. Obviously got the bus lane being put in. The level of staggering that's in here at the moment, that wouldn't be achievable in terms of manoeuvring of vehicles. It's too tight to switch of direction. So again, that's needs to be ironed out in terms of some of the alignment and some of the footprint that's with this junction. So again, looking at this junction, what we're seeing is, in terms of inbound, we're seeing again almost more than a doubling of queuing. That's with, I guess, the bus priority that's taking out that lane, leaving a single lane coming through. So in the end, there's an increase there. On Arbury Road, we're seeing that as well. With a 6-stage junction here, every time you have a stage in the signalling, that also takes away some capacity from the junction, adds a bit of extra delay. Because we've got a dedicated pedestrian stage, cycling, and we've got the bus early release, that all kind of starts to add up in terms of delay within the junction. You're again seeing on the Milton Road outbound, you're seeing an increase in queuing again in the due optimum, and you're seeing that on Union Lane. So in all aspects of this particular junction, we've had to relook at that in terms of how we can best make this work. What we've come up with, I hope as you see, is not too dissimilar. What we've suggested in our solution is to enable Union Lane to still remain open, but get some additional movement and capacity within the junction. What we've done is we're suggesting a left-hand turn ban coming out of Union Lane. But just let me explain what that's for. So that enables, in this scenario, us to have less stages, because what we can run the pedestrian stage here, the longest crossing for pedestrians, at the same stage as Union Lane, because it can only go straight ahead or right. And that means that our all-head stage is a lot shorter, so it means more time for less to close down the junction to all kind of movements, which enables that better capacity to be maintained. Where we can, we've obviously put in dedicated cycle lanes to enable turns. You can see some of the shared surface here coming in a section which was highlighted in the LLF discussions that there was a demand for shared surface here. So what we've tried to do is try to accommodate as much of the cycle movements as we can while still maintaining the level of capacity at this junction as best we can. This is when we add up all those vehicle queues, this is the difference that we're seeing. So the blue, again, is the current situation. The red is the due optimum, and the purple is the modified due optimum, which I've just shown you. So again, if we go with the due optimum with the staging that's there, in terms of the tightness of the junction, we're looking at there will be a big increase in queues. We've tried to maintain the elements we can within designing a junction of this type with those elements, and therefore come with a modified option, which is an improvement on the current situation rather than making it worse in terms of queuing in the current situation.
Good. Questions? Yes.
Just a couple of questions.
Yes.
I'm assuming in your scenarios you've moved the bus stop that is sort of just as you turn right out of the lane on the Robin Road, because currently that blocks a lot of traffic. And secondly, you've presented an option for a band left turn. I know on Elizabeth Way, Howard Avenue one, you've presented more than one option to look at. Did you, for example, look at modifying traffic signals, say you're delaying them, or banning a right turn instead, which would make more sense than banning a left turn in terms of that? I wouldn't be hugely keen on that one.
No.
Yeah, I mean, would it be a fair summary to say that all these junctions are actually worse for cyclists than they currently are? I mean, the Elizabeth Way one, you showed a load of accidents on the roundabout, and the improvement is to have the same roundabout but traffic going faster. The logical consequence would seem to be faster cars hitting the same cyclists and having worse accidents. And then on Arbury Road, you've got a cycle lane in between 2 lanes of traffic. I wouldn't be madly keen about my year 7 child going down there.
Right.
Chair. Sorry, I want in due course.
No, please.
It's got to be clear that what we're being shown are these great long red lines, the increase for due optimum, that's all vehicles. But actually, who gives talks about all vehicles? You're trying, this plan you tell us is to get the buses through quicker, and yet there's no modelling that shows what the achievement is on that Arbury Road junction, for instance, of getting the buses through, with the head start and the separate bus lane. I'm not comfortable that the modelling is in accordance with what's trying to be achieved by the whole of the city deal plan.
Yes, up the back, please. You with the white coat on. You've got your hand up. Somebody's got their hand. Please, stand up. Could you stand up? Everybody in the back, if you want to ask a question, could you please stand? Yes.
Yes, sorry.
Ask your question.
In all these different scenarios, there's been a lot of talk about buses and bus times, bus lanes, where they come on, where they come off. What is the level of bus travel that actually goes down Milton Road? Because I go down Milton Road quite a lot, and it's very rarely that I actually see a bus. But you put in a great deal of effort in dealing with the buses in all of these, and it just seems that you're putting too much focus on the buses when it's the cars and the people and the cycles that are actually the big problem. How many buses are there? What are you looking at? What's the volume?
And now Jerry, you've got a question.
Okay, my question's about Union Lane, no left turn out onto Milton Road. That's going to cause the problems, like we said originally, like even if you close it, with the high street in Chesterton. You're not going to get, the traffic's not going to wait there because then they can't turn left. So then they're going to come all the way back into the high street. Block up the whole high street is blocked up now, and the buses have a hell of a job to get through. We're talking about buses, let alone cars, cycles, whatever. So that is not a good option. We should still keep the left turn. That takes a bit of the traffic away from the high street, and all the people that live off Union Lane can get out onto Milton Road. Helps them get to work or...
Let's stop here and we'll answer those. So maybe if we do the one, because Claire and Jerry have really asked the same thing about the left-hand turn.
So what we're trying to do is, so originally we looked at options of closing Union Lane. Obviously that wasn't popular. What we're looking to do is try and accommodate a change here. This is what I said before about working with Arbury Road and Elizabeth Way roundabout to try and improve some opportunities for optimisation here in terms of enabling the junctions to work better together, simplifying the junctions to increase the capacity of these junctions where they have an impact on one another. So one option of that is to limit the amount of phasing or enable us to still maintain pedestrian and cycle crossings as much as possible whilst optimising that within the signal and staging of the junction. One option to do that is to remove the left turn, makes that simpler for Union Lane, so still access, it's still maintaining that, but it's kind of simplifying the junction to enable us to have that additional capacity. I think with all these solutions, if we don't do anything really any different, we have all the movements we've got here at the moment. As Charles said, obviously that decreases capacity or increases queuing. Maybe that isn't seen as a problem, but when we look at it as cumulative along the whole road, and that starts to add up to a doubling of journey time for vehicles to travel down this radial route, that becomes an issue. So, as I say, these are concepts. This is something we're putting forward as one way to enhance the junction with some of the cycle lanes and pedestrian priority we've seen in your optimum proposal, whilst still being able to accommodate an optimisation of the junction. In terms of the gentleman saying he wouldn't want his daughter cycling on the cycle lane, there's a shared use service here as well. So what we've tried to do is for those less confident cycles or children, they could cycle here. This is for your commuter cyclists, and I think one of the things we've got to consider, there's quite a few different types of cyclists that travel on Milton Road. You've got your kind of professional or whatever you want to call them, commuter cyclist who just wants to go and doesn't want to get entangled in mixing with pedestrians. And obviously you've got school children who are less confident and want to be kept away. And that's one of the things we're conscious of when we're trying to accommodate where we can. Sometimes there's double priority for cyclists almost. There's the kind of priority lane for those who just want to get going, and there's shared surface for those that want to are less confident on the road or need to be safer as their children.
Two questions that really go to the bus issue. That Charles was asking, is there any modelling being done on actually getting the buses through? Because the modelling seems...
Yeah, so if I get to that point in the presentation, I can show you the difference that it makes to buses as a whole, along the whole scheme, in terms of the modify all these changes to the junction, what that means to buses. Obviously, when we improve, what we haven't done at this stage in the modelling is looked at bus priorities, and we wanted to see just what was going to occur in terms of just putting the bus lanes in, seeing what effect that had. We can put bus priority each. When we've got signalisation, there's ability to give that extra priority to buses. That impacts on the capacity for other vehicles. And I think when we look at it as a whole, this saves enough journey time that we've got ability to play with it then to see where we can enhance bus priority each of the junctions and still maintain sort of the current levels of journey time for general traffic down Milton Road.
There was a general question about, we see hardly any buses coming down, so why are we concentrating on buses?
Okay, what we're looking at, as Chris has said at the beginning of the presentation, we're not just looking for now, we're looking for 2031. We've got Water Beach coming forward. I know some of these discussions we've had at the beginning of this presentation, but we need to provide people with the opportunity to not be in their vehicles, to give them as much public transport opportunities as possible. So it's not about just the situation today, it's about the future and being able to provide additional capacity for buses or an enhanced frequency of buses down Milton Road to deal with the capacity that's going to want to travel into the city in the future.
Jerry's got a question, but I just want to say too that there was a proposal put forward in relation to Union Lane that we have staggered.
Yes. So
and so, I mean, I think my own view is that if you have staggered lighting there, then at peak times, then you actually handle the matter without having to have a right turn ban or a left turn ban, and you get traffic out of.
So we have looked at that. We've looked at having some alternate staging, so the Union Lane would be made to wait longer before its release. I haven't shown those results, but effectively it's worse than the solution we put forward, just because you have to have a dedicated stage of the signalling for Union Lane to have all those reasons, rather than interweaving it with some of the pedestrian stages by banning the left turn. Probably getting into the complications of how the junction works, but essentially we did look at that. It is not as optimum as the purple suggestion, but if that's, as I say, it's a design concept, the elements we're putting forward as a whole to improve the corridor as a whole, and some of these elements can be looked at as we go forward into the detail.
Jerry, did you have a...
Yeah, just going back to that, the way you're doing it, no left turn, so the buses can get through as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Right, so in East Chesterton, that means we're going to have to catch a bus an hour before we really want it, just so we can get out of East Chesterton, because we've only got two ways of getting out. So you're blocking the left-hand turn out of Union Lane onto Milton Road causes big eruptions. You're not listening to what we're trying to say to
Yeah.
residents that live there.
If-
That is an important issue. You're going to cause eruptions doing that.
If we say we went for an option where we limited the amount of times that Union Lane Junction was allowed to have traffic enter onto the junction, so people will get to know that Union Lane only triggers every second or third time that the junction timing comes round, the queue would start to build then as well, wouldn't it? And people would think to reroute in any case to alternative routes if they knew there was always going to be a case on the Union Lane being a queue. So I think wherever we look with this, we're going to have, there's going to be some impact on the network. It's trying to accommodate that. The aim here is to, on a minor road like Union Lane, we're trying to make to the benefit of Milton Road as a whole by minimising the impact on residents on Union Lane as much as possible while still being able to undertake a change.
I guess that if I could just say something here, one of the points here though is you're talking about a ban on left turns as if it's going to be forever, but there's an issue surely about peak time traffic and peak hour traffic and peak hour buses, and that doesn't happen through the whole of 24 hours. Therefore, if you've got a ban, I'm not asking you to answer this now, I'm just putting it forward because it seems to me that we want to get on and have as many questions as we can, but I think that has to be thought about.
Can I just briefly pick up Jerry's points to just try and make this a bit more positive both ways? You don't feel like you're being massively attacked all the time, which I appreciate. If what you're saying is you disagree with Jerry's point, then that is a really easy one where we could gain a lot of confidence as residents in the community. We could trial that and we could show who was right. We could show what the impact was. And then rather than having these very theoretical debates about what the impact on was and whether people like Jerry and I know the community really well right, or whether your modelling is right, it would be a really easy way to build up a lot of confidence in this process, whether if you did the trial and it disproved Jerry and I, or whether you did the trial and it proved you right, we'd still have a much better, I think as residents, a much better confidence in going forward when you're saying things like our modelling works. We'd say, well, actually, that time it did work.
What we did.
We don't actually need a response to that. What's been proposed is they've been trialling, and that's something that have to be thought about, I think, by the City Deal Board, not by the consultant's mind. And then we'll go on to the next junction.
Yeah, one of the things that hasn't been discussed here in terms of the ban on left turns, obviously, is that people then have to run through the Hurst Park estate in order to go into town. They'll go up Arbury Road and turn into Leeds Road and work their way through the Hurst Park estate. Is your modelling looking at that? Is this proposal looking at that? Because one of the things we did say was we wanted mitigation matters built into any scheme to stop rattling.
As I say, it's an early design concept, so we haven't taken to the level of looking at what the mitigation will be outside of the corridor at this stage. We're trying to have a concept we can work forward in. And I take the point, as you're saying, about trialling. Obviously, you've talked around the kind of money that's being spent on this moment. What we aim to do with modelling, obviously, is to undertake modelling to see what the impact would be without having to take physical measures necessarily, which are quite costly. But that's not something that necessarily we shouldn't go in trial, but obviously there's a cost implication from that, and that's why modelling generally is used to give an estimate of what the impact will be before anything's committed on the ground. So just to say that. But I think the indication I've given is that's something that we're considered.
Right, well now we'll move on to the next junction, which, as I recall, is King's Hedges Road. Now I know, Matt, that you've got a lot of questions, and I've been sitting here thinking that the solution is that we need to set up an actual dedicated meeting between you and the officers that would be a meeting that would not have any interruptions to it from anybody else, but would be you and the officers getting together to talk through your concerns about their concept.
Because you said at some point that the exclusive walk scenario, the exclusive walk phase could be shortened because you have that banned left turn. And I want to point out that that's not the case. First, number one, the exclusive walk phase, all directions green, was one of the most top features requested in all the meetings that we had. So I made sure to include it, and that drove the rest of the design of the junction the all directions green solution that's used in the Netherlands, for example. And so but you can't shorten the all exclusive walk signal because of the band left turn, because people will still try to walk across that arm of the junction, and only that they're going to try and walk across the arm of the junction where you remove the crossing, which is today an extremely busy crossing. So I don't see how that's workable at all.
No, as Justin suggested, I think if we're going to get out of here this evening, I think I'm happy to take more detailed offline chats with you about if you want knowledge, but I think otherwise sorry guys, we probably will be here all evening.